top 5 tips for closing on a home. We are going to get a real estate perspective and a mortgage perspective. We're going to mix them together and show you how we work together and why it is important to have a solid team. Number 1 is stay organized and communicate regularly. So it's important to have open communication with both your realtor and so you want to keep your documents organized. Why is keeping some of your documents organized important on your side?
Yeah, so as most people know, we do require quite a bit to get approved for a mortgage, but the most frustrating part is going back and forth all the time. So if we ask for a list of things, you have everything kind of organized and send it all at once, it makes the process so much smoother for you and for us. So nobody gets frustrated across the board. So getting that stuff all set up ahead of time and being organized is very, very key to making a stress-free environment.
And then if we have open lines of communication, we can all work together to make sure that we have everything we need in a timely manner. Like Joel said, if there's something that comes up that we need to make sure we fix, as long as we're working as a team, if Joel reaches out to me and I reach out to the client, then as long as the client is responding to both of us, then we can get things fixed and make sure we are moving right along. Because the whole goal is to get closed as quickly as possible and make it a smooth transaction.
I 100% agree. All problems can be fixed across the board. It's just a matter of having time to do so. So if you don't communicate, don't let us know there's something that's come up, that's huge on both parts. So let's make sure we stay communicating between all parties so that we can make sure everything is smooth as possible.
2 is to always get a home inspection. Now I have a couple of home inspectors that I have used in the past that are wonderful, that I can always recommend to you. You can see their pricing and then you can decide which one you want to use. It is important to get a home inspection so that we can identify any problems that you might have after moving in, after closing, even on new construction. Now new construction, you have a year warranty, but what's important is you identify these little problems that can be fixed before you move in the house. I think that that's a huge thing to take away from this. Also, if we do have huge repairs that the seller might not even know about, we can go back and we can negotiate that in the purchase price. We can get a credit for those repairs, or we can request that they get fixed prior to closing.
Yeah, and the only part I'll put into that as far as on our side is try to get it done as soon as possible, because we want it to be done prior to your appraisal. The only thing that comes down to it, that's an expense to you from us, you're gonna have to pay for that appraisal. If you don't get that inspection done in time and say you decide not to move forward, that's gonna be an out cost for you that you have to pay out that really won't do you any good at this point. So try to get it done and scheduled as soon as possible once you get that contract accepted, and outside of that, that's all I can tell you on the lender side.
That's a good point though. I didn't think about, we do get it done as quickly as possible, and our inspectors are usually quick and out there, but I didn't think about that. 3 is to secure homeowners insurance. This is one that I recommend that you shop around. So in my buyer's guide, I have 3 different contacts that you can reach out to. They will give you an estimate and a breakdown. It's also important on the lender side because
get as soon as possible, really mostly because we want to definitely verify the qualifications, right? So debt to income is a very big piece of the lender side of things, and with us being on the coast in certain areas, we have some very expensive flood insurance or wind and hail, and everybody knows all kinds about that. But when it comes down to it, depending on how old the house is, all that kind of stuff. So we try to get these quotes out as soon as possible so that I can verify that pre-approval is still valid. So I do that up front and try to get that from my clients as soon as possible.
And certain loans have certain requirements, correct, for the homeowner's insurance?
Yeah, for Mostly across the board, it's just having that replacement cost coverage, and your insurance agents are going to have to walk you through certain houses how that can be looks like. Sometimes you have one policy, sometimes you have 3 policies. When the replacement cost coverage, and we will get like the cost calculator from the agent that kind of lets us know that we are getting that coverage. Now the flood is something that can be a little bit tougher sometimes. I'm going to help you provide when we need that, but you're also going to need to get an elevation certificate, which we can get from sometimes the seller, or sometimes you have to actually get one new one done, depending on how long it's been. So a lot of moving parts when it comes to insurance, so that's why you want to try to jump on as soon as possible.
If you have any questions, if a property is in a flood zone, you can call or text me and I will find out for you. This can change, so always ask me. Number 4 is to review the closing disclosure.
So in the mortgage process, this kind of changed quite some time ago when we have to have a closing disclosure sent out to you within a certain amount of time. So a lot of times now it's being sent out closer to the middle or beginning of the process as it was towards the end. Now, these are estimates at that point in time, but it does give you a good idea of what you're going to be looking at for cost to close, basically how much money you're going to be bringing to the closing table. So try to pay attention to it up front as much as possible. Maybe spark some questions that you might have on what these fees are, and we can kind of talk about it, let you know, so that there's no question marks or no, I guess, things at the end that scare you a little bit. So really paying attention to that. Don't just hit that DocuSign and sign it over like always. Make sure you actually pay attention to it, look at it, and we'll go from there.
And the closing disclosure comes from the lender.
It does. It's released by us once we know exactly who the attorney's going to be. And honestly, the insurance, which we talked about a little bit earlier, but is something that we want to put in there as well, so that can affect that cash to close. So all the things that we can get up front as much as possible will help this closing disclosure be as accurate as possible.
And then the rule is they have to have the final settlement statement, which comes from the closing disclosure 3 days prior to closing.
Yes, so we try to get that final disclosure to you as soon as possible, but yes, there is a 3-day waiting period time. If this disclosure is not released to you prior to that, we have to wait 3 days before we're able to actually close on the loan.
Is to conduct a final walkthrough. Now we usually do this 2 or 3 days prior to closing. It just depends on your schedule, the seller's schedule. We can even do it the morning of closing, depending on what time your closing is. But really the point of this is to walk through the property, make sure it is in the same condition as when we put the offer in on it. If there are repairs, we make sure that the repairs have been completed. Now if there are repairs, I usually have a final walkthrough about a week before closing. And then we'll check on those repairs. If there's anything that we see that needs to be addressed, we can have a week that those can be addressed prior to closing. We have 2 quick bonus tips for closing. This, number 1, is make sure you have a photo ID that you bring to the closing attorney's office. Now they're gonna make a copy of it and they will include it in all of their closing documents.
Another thing, just make sure that is a valid ID. Believe it or not, a lot of times clients don't realize that their license has expired during the process. We try to catch it if we see it on our side, but when it comes down to it, it's something you want to definitely double check before you get to closing, because it does need to be valid. We can use a passport or something else as a backup, but at this point in time, it's just ideal to make sure that license is up to date.
Make sure you check that at the beginning of the process, so if you need to make an appointment to go to the DMV, you have plenty of time. And then our second tip is wiring. So you want to make sure that you have plenty of time for wiring the funds to the closing attorney. Definitely
a big deal there. We try to get you the final number as soon as possible, but you want to wire those funds maybe at least a day before. Sometimes we can look at the numbers, give you a little bit of a cushion, and then the attorney will actually refund the little bit of money back if there's some extra funds there. That just ensures that your funds are there on time, making sure that you can get recorded the same day and everything is as smooth as possible. The other thing is the wire instructions. Make sure you really get those from the attorney. I can't provide them to you. Jordan can either as well, but that's something we want to make sure you get from them because there's been a lot of wire fraud. So the attorney's going to provide that to you directly and making sure those funds get to the right spot.
So big takeaways is make sure we have communication. It's important to have a solid team. So make sure if you are looking to buy a home, call me or Joel. All of our contact information is below.